Y'all know I'm a huge Black Templars fan. They're my main army, sitting at around 5,000 points worth of models. I made a few lore videos and list videos about them, but the videos talking about my favorite lists are a bit outdated. It's been over a year since my top list picks videos for Templars, and a lot has changed in that time, both in the rules and how I run my army. So today, I figured we could go revisit that video. Go over what my top units are now, why they're my top units, and put together a list that's both fun and competitive, while letting you run a mixed bag of units that get you the best of what playing Space Marines and Black Templars have to offer. Welcome back to Starhammer. No lore in this one, we're just going to jump straight into it. I've been playing a lot of 3-person games lately, so I haven't been running a 2K list like I normally would. My pod and I have found that the sweet spot is around 1,650 points. This ensures that everyone can run a pretty varied list that's both fun and competitive, but also limited enough to require choices. Please keep in mind this is just a list that has worked for me. Your experience may vary, but I found that this list is capable of tackling most tasks on the board, and with strategic thinking, come out on top. Let's start with the characters. First up, we got a Chaplain, 60 points. A staple of most Black Templar lists, the Chaplain is a fantastic fighter in his own right, but also gives a great fight phase buff in that he lets his unit add 1 to the wound roll made for melee attacks. In terms of stats, I won't get that deep into it. They're all Space Marines on this list, so except for a couple of units and vehicles, everything here is going to pretty much be the same. If there's anything to note, I'll be sure to point it out. Anyway, he's got a 4-up invulnerable save like most characters, pretty decent pistol for ranged attacks, and a very good melee weapon that hits on a 2-up as opposed to the 3-up that his pistol does. It has 6 strength, so that's going to trump most average infantry toughness. And with AP 1 and 2 damage, one good whack getting through is usually enough to kill at least one model. With his ability to add 1 to the wound proccing off of himself, he's also not a bad choice for giving a light vehicle a good smack either, especially if you can stack him with other hard-hitting melee units. I personally love to run this guy with Sword Brothers due to their ability to add 1 to attacks or damage at the start of each fight phase. We'll get to them in a bit. I also recommend running him with the Sigismund Seal enhancement to let him crit on 5-ups with the accept any challenge no matter the odds vow, giving him sustained 1 and an extra melee attack. Now we've got a Judiciar at 70 points. Basically, it's the same stat block as the Chaplain, same with his ranged attack. We want to pay attention to his melee. The Executioner Relic Blade is that massive anime sword he's packing around on the model. It has 5 attacks, hits on 2-up, 7 strength, AP 2, and 2 damage with dev wounds and precision. Now I won't discuss definitions in this video, I'll assume you know what all these keywords and such mean going forward, but as a quick reminder, dev wounds are crits rolled in the wound step, resulting in wounds that can't be saved against, in most cases. Precision allows you to target a character unit through their bodyguards. It's probably a good spot to say that if you are super new and don't know how to play or haven't played a lot, go check out my Learn to Play video, which is tailored explicitly for new players. You should see a little card pop up for it here and at the end of the video. So the Judiciar is super neat because whenever he destroys another character, he gets to add 1 to his melee attacks until the end of the game. That stacks, by the way. He also gives his unit fights first, allowing you to be the first one to swing in the fight phase, provided you aren't charged. I like to run this guy with Blade Guard vets. He meshes well with their abilities, which we'll get to in a bit, in terms of increasing his survivability and his damage potential. Fun fact, Judiciars are chaplains in training. And the Judiciar is coming in at 70 points, by the way. Next up, we got the Marshal for 75 points. Basically, they have the same stats as everyone else, but with 5 wounds instead of 4. He has a little bit of variety in his war gear, able to pack a plasma pistol or a combi weapon. I go back and forth on it, but the combi weapon is the more strategic choice with the anti-infantry 4-up, dev wounds, and rapid fire. His mastercrafted power weapon is alright as well, with a sizable amount of attacks, good armor piercing, and good damage. Even if just a few attacks end up wounding, that's still enough to mow through even tankier infantry models. His Rites of Battle allow him to use a stratagem at a reduced 1 CP cost, so you can use that for a free reroll or Armor of Contempt or whatever else the situation warrants. Finest Hour is a Hail Mary play you can do once per battle in the fight phase, letting you add 3 to his attacks and dev wounds for taking down a particularly sturdy enemy unit. Last, but certainly not least, we got my boy, EC, or the Emperor's Champion, at 75 points. If you've been around the channel a while, you'll know this guy is my MVP, my all-time favorite character unit, and a must-have for any Templars list. His stats are a little different than the others, with the 2-up default save, 5 wounds, and a 4-up invuln. His range attacks are pretty ass, but we don't care about that. What we care about is his black sword melee attacks. You got 2 options for swinging, being able to sweep or strike. The sweep option is great when you're surrounded or when you need to cleave your way closer to an enemy character, giving you a whopping 10 attacks at strength 6 and 2 AP. After that's where the strike profile comes into play. This has precision, 6 attacks, 8 strength, AP, and damage 3. Basically, this is the profile you want to use when you want to make someone super dead. His abilities are also pretty sweet. Skillful Parry allows you to change the damage characteristic of an attack that got through to him to 0 once per phase, but only against melee attacks. Sigismund's Heir lets you add 1 to the wound roll when targeting characters to give you that extra oomph you need to make sure that your attacks wound. I've used EC in almost every game I play. He's a fantastic anti-character unit, but with his stats and how hard he hits in melee, I've also used him as a very successful AT unit as well. I like to run him with a Primaris Crusader squad because without precision, the enemy is going to have to chew through a 10-man meat wall to get to him. He doesn't have any unit buffs, but that's not why we take him. We take him because he hits like a truck, and with Templar Vows and Oath of Moment, can absolutely rip through enemy units. For being so cheap in points, he's a must-have. I've never seen him not put the Fear of God into whoever is unlucky enough to have a unit go up against him. I've even seen him take down a knight. He's very easy to roll well with and is a fantastic light vehicle and anti-character unit that every Black Templars player should be running. While our characters are all cool, we gotta talk about our battle line, the grunts. In this list, we're rocking 2 Primaris Crusader squads, or PCSs, at 150 a pop. We run these with 5 initiates and 4 neophytes. For the loadout, it'll go as follows. Your sword bro has a power weapon and pyre pistol. This allows him to shoot in melee while also not having to worry about rolling to hit due to it being torrent. And D6 attacks aren't half bad either, compared to the one you get from the heavy pistol. Trade-off is having a volume of fire potential over 1 AP. Regarding the math, I like the odds more on the pyre pistol. The initiates are going to have 3 chain swords, 5 bolt pistols, 5 heavy bolt pistols, 5 close combat weapons, and 2 power fists. I have no fucking idea why it has to be this way, but it is very important that you put this into the app exactly like I said, or you're going to get an invalid gear error. I think this is just an oversight on GW's part that they don't think it's important enough to fix, but it can be a little confusing making your guys carry around 10 pistols. It's redundant, but we all know how silly GW is with this kind of stuff. To round it out, we're going to leave the neophytes with their default chainsword and bolt pistol loadouts. You can give them neophyte firearms and close combat weapons instead, but I wouldn't. Sure, they get assault, but the sheer volume of chainsword strikes you can get from the neophytes and the initiates is super fucking gross when you take your Templar Vows into consideration. For context, that's 35 chainsword attacks if everyone can swing, not counting any sustained you might get from Templar Vows. You have the 2 power fists as well to give your marines a little extra punch if they need it, no pun intended. You can swap those out for pyre blasters, which are just better flamers, and that's not a bad move as they're strength 5 torrent weapons that ignore cover, but we're shooting for maximum melee potential here. And for that, we can't forget their ability, which lets them reroll charges. They also get Scout 6, so you can get them up the field with a little bit of head start. Something to note is that the neophytes have almost the same stats as the marines, the exception of the 4-up save. You can allocate wounds how you want, but I usually kill off the recruits first, just as a fun little headcanon. However, keeping the squad in cover will usually let you have their save down to a 3-up like the marines, or keep it at their default. But to get around the battlefield and up to the midfield quickly, we're going to need some help. That's where our Impulsor transport comes in at 90 points. This is a cheap unit capable of transporting 7 Tacticus or Phobos models and rocks a 12-inch movement speed, 9 toughness, 3-up save, and 11 wounds. Pretty standard for Imperial light vehicles, but the 7 transport capacity lets us transport units like Blade Guard and Sword Bros up and down the board very quickly. It's got a few different loadout options, but I like to run it with 2 frag launchers, a Melta, and a missile array to give it a little bit more punch. That array gives you 3 missiles to choose from, 1 to deal with mobs, 1 for light vehicles, and 1 for flying units. The Impulsor is an all-around fun transport vehicle, and has several loadout options depending on what sort of game you're going to be in. Sometimes I'll swap out the array for a shield dome to give it a 5-up invuln, but I tend to run this in a support capacity. It can get my heavy hitter melee squads on a point quickly and provide support while it's there. It also has Fire Index 6, which allows any units embarked to shoot as if the transport were equipped with those weapons. It's going to be a really funky thing to use with a 5-man Infernus squad, as it gives the transport a bit more variety in dealing with close quarters threats, with those AP1 flamers getting D6 attacks apiece. Starting off in the home stretch, we got Assault Intercessors with jump packs at 90 points. A mobile and hard-hitting unit, these Marines are going to be rocking 2 plasma pistols, and 1 guy's going to have a power fist. In terms of stats, these guys are just regular Space Marines that move fast. Their ability is what you want to pay attention to though. After finishing a charge move, this unit can select one enemy unit it's engaged with and roll a d6 for each model in that unit. On a 4-up, that unit suffers a mortal wound. That's a pretty good way to get a head start on damage before the fighting starts, and if you roll well on, say, a unit of Necron warriors, there's an okay chance you'll kill a sizable chunk of that brick before you even swing. These guys aren't super impressive with just chainswords, but with 4 attacks apiece and a power fist, combined with the Templar Vow of your choice, these guys are pretty decent in melee. Their extra movement gives you a lot of freedom in how you position them, and they also have deep strike to let you get creative. The Ballistus Dreadnought is going to be one of our main AT options for 130 points. He's not the best dread the Space Marines have, but he's a great pick in a medium-sized list for his points. His stats are pretty solid, making him very tough with a decent wound pull and great save in OC. Just great all around, but that's dreads in general this edition. He only has 3 guns. Las cannon, a missile launcher with either frag or crack rounds, and a rapid-fire twin-link storm bolter for close range. I like to park this guy on my home point and just let him go wild at the laser and the missiles. His ability enables you to re-roll the hit roll whenever he targets a unit that isn't below half strength, and you can cheese this with your Oath of Moment on the right target to get 2 instances of re-rolls, provided that target isn't below half. It sort of offsets our low attacks, but if you can manage to land all 4 shots of your AT, the chances of at least keeping enemy armor away from your infantry and cowering behind terrain and out of the way are pretty high. The Ballistus is a major deterrent for enemy armor and a target if they're feeling bold. Keep it in cover though, and it's usually alright. Speaking of killing enemy armor, our 5-man Eradicator squad for 200 points is next in line. These guys are a more personal choice for me because they're packing Meltas and they're quite tough for Space Marines, as you can see here. You can run 2 of them with multi-Meltas if you so choose, giving you 2 attacks instead of 1, but Meltas are pretty effective at killing bigger targets with the high AP. They're slow and short range, so be sure to just advance their asses up the field as soon as you can. The coolest thing about them is their total obliteration ability, allowing you full rerolls across the board against monsters and vehicles, making them a particularly potent AT option when you stack this with Oath of Moment. Oh my god, that voice crack. We love our rerolls around here, but the more technical justification is that little Melta X keyword on the weapons. That means you add that much damage on top of your damage roll if within half range. Catan and other similar enemies have an ability that lets them have incoming damage, but the Melta X mechanic lets you get around that, as the X happens regardless of the roll and automatically applies since it's from an ability and not an attack. As I said, they're a bit of a personal choice for me and they might not be right for everyone, but my opponents run a lot of medium toughness vehicles and Catan, so they're really effective on my board. There are a few excellent options for more AT that have a little bit more consistency and a similar points value, like the Desolation Squad, or Redemptor Dread for an extra 10 points, or Impulsor Tank for 10 points less. This one is up to you guys to decide for yourselves. The Redemptor is usually going to be my fallback option if I don't run the Eradicators, just because of the fantastic weapon options you get with it, being the best dreadnought available. As you can see, it's got a little something for any problem you might face. Hellblasters are a pricey but destructive infantry unit, coming in at 230 for a squad of 10. Not a lot to say here, as they're pretty straightforward. These guys are all packing plasma incinerators with assault, allowing you to advance them up the board and fire off a volley of devastating plasma shots. They also have the heavy keyword, giving you a ballistic skill buff if you don't move once you get them where they need to be. And with 2 attacks each, you're going to be firing 20 high strength, high AP rounds downrange. Overcharged or not, these are probably going to knock down quite a few models in any infantry block, and are great at tackling the more elite units or light vehicles. What's even cooler is their For the Chapter ability, which allows you to roll a d6 for each time a model in that unit is destroyed, and on a 3-up, that destroyed model gets to shoot before it's removed from the table. This even triggers when a hazardous test is failed, giving your boys one last hurrah before their plasma gun explodes in their face. A tactic you can do as well is break them into 2 squads of 5. Pack one of them around in the Impulsor for some high-speed plasma fire whenever you might need it, by utilizing that firing deck ability that I mentioned earlier. Blade Guard Vets are next up with a 5-man unit for 180 points. They're slightly tankier than your average Marine with 3 wounds and a 4-up invuln save. Besides backing pistols, with one of them being able to choose between a heavy bolt pistol and the Volkite plasma, your options for loadouts across the board are fixed on pistols and swords. With 4 attacks each, you're getting a whopping 20 power sword attacks with great AP and damage potential. Against most enemy infantry, these guys shred. Their Blade Guard ability allows them to reroll hit rolls of 1 on their melee attacks or invulnerable saving throws of 1, either one picked at the start of the fight phase. I tend to run these guys with the Judiciar and park them on a point to wait for a character-led unit to wander up. Their saves make a viable defensive option, and few things are as cool as a shield wall of Space Marines. Lastly, we got a 5-man Sword Bretheren squad for 150. points. If you ever played against or utilized sword bows before, you know they are a really scary melee unit and probably the best Templar specific unit that you can have. Just about every Black Templar list should have them, and if you don't, you're wrong and should be burned as a heretic. In Minecraft, of course. They have a fantastic melee-based loadout, but get these fucking chainswords out of here. This is a man's unit. We're rocking our Castellan with a combo weapon for the anti-infantry and dev wounds and a power weapon, while the rest of our guys are rocking 2 power weapons, 2 power pistols, a thunder hammer, and lightning claws. Not only is their damage output, when combined with Vows and the appropriate leader, such as a Chaplain, fucking nuts, as you can see with all these stat blocks. Their Vows Sworn Bladesman ability allows you to either add 1 to attacks or damage at the start of the fight phase. Important to note, not just your fight phase, any fight phase. They also pair really well with Grimaldus and Hellbrick in larger games. Hellbrick for lethality, Grimaldus for support. I don't think I need to explain too much why running these guys with a Chaplain is your best option. Anything that increases the chances of us getting more hits on a big target is something we want. And that's all the models for this list. I tend to not lean into meta lists, as I'd much rather run units that I think are fun and cool over what's competitive. Don't get me wrong, I love winning, but having units that are cool on the board is more important to me. That said, this has been my go-to list, more or less, for the past several months. Every now and then I'll change it around, but by and large, this is it. It offers a solid mix of ranged and melee options, allowing you to put a lot of guys on the board and add utility and damage. It's the perfect combo of fun and competitive, in my perfect opinion. Attach your Chaplain to your sword bros, the Judiciar to the blade guard, the Marshal to a PSB, and EC to a PSB. Chaplain will buff the wound rolls of the sword bros. The Judiciar will be well protected as he lies in wait for enemy characters or goes to hunt them down. The Marshal will give you a stratagem cost reduction by 1 CP for the Crusade squad in case you need Armor of Contempt or a charge reroll, and EC will have a 10-man meat shield while he hunts the enemy warlord. What about stratagems though? Previously I'd tell you to spam Armor of Contempt for free with your Marshal, but that time has passed. Armor of Contempt now only lasts until the unit targeting your unit has finished attacks, instead of the whole last phase. RIP indeed. You can still save your ass if you're in cover because you can stack the 2 negatives to AP, but it's not nearly as potent as it used to be. However, Vicious Riposte is a fantastic fight on death strat for only 1 CP. Allow you to roll for destroyed models to fight before they get removed from the board. This happens on 4-up, but if you have the Uphold the Honor of the Emperor vow active, it's 3-up. This is great if you get charged by like a unit of Scorpex or something like that that's probably going to chew through several models when they swing. You'll lose dudes regardless, but it'll give you a fighting chance to make them lose a few dudes as well. When it comes to Vows, I prefer to run them with the accept any challenge no matter the odds. This gives you melee attacks sustained 1 and gives you more chances to do more damage. This is especially useful because, as you saw, a lot of our melee units are doing a shitload of attacks. Volume of fire is key. Suffer Not the Unclean to Live isn't half bad either, but I prefer to run that one in my larger lists personally. Lethals are great, but in smaller games with fewer dudes, I need to make up for that with more attacks as opposed to auto wounds. Still a fantastic vow, I might add, just not one that I think meshes well with this list. Uphold the Honor of the Emperor is great when it comes to holding down points. It gives all your guys a 5-up leadership, so it's really hard to fail battle shock tests, and a 6-up feel no pain across the board. 6-up, which is great for dealing with dev wounds and the like. I don't use this vow too often, as I'm normally able to be rather lethal with my rolling, but it's still great for utility. That said, I would still prefer the extra attacks from sustained hits. Abhor the Witch, Destroy the Witch. I'll be real, I've never ran this vow, not once. Nobody I play against uses Psychers with the exception of Blood Angels, sometimes. Like in one game. So if you've used this to give your guys the 4-up invuln against psychic attacks and the anti-psyker 4-up ability, let me know how that went. As a Thousand Suns player, that vow puts the fear of God in me, but with how limited even their psychic powers are on the tabletop, I'm a bit skeptical about whether you'd even need it. But that's all I got for this one, y'all. This is my default list lately, and one that I think is the perfect balance of fun and competitive utility. Everything synergizes quite well together, and if you use your noodle, you'll come out on top almost every time. Provided Tzeentch doesn't screw your rolls up too badly. Full list will be in the description, and let me know what your lists are and what you think of mine. As always, drop a like if you like it, a subscribe if you really liked it, and check the community tab for shitposts and shenanigans. Follow me on Blue Sky and look for other goodies in the description as well, and I'll see you all in the next one. Toodles.